So because of weather mostly, we've had to interrupt the flow of classes. We just started Exodus 15, which is often called the Song of the Sea or the Song of Moses or the Song of Miriam. And it's breaking out in celebration. First Moses and then later Miriam does it, to celebrate Yahweh's, God's deliverance, our deliverance as the Israelites from slavery to freedom. And Aaron brought out images of Torah, which are really quite fascinating, and they make a particular point. Do you want to share what that point is again?
Well, if you remember, I shared with you the actual text in a Torah scroll of this section, of this particular story, and where columns of Torah script are essentially justified right and left, and while they differ slightly because of paragraph structure, they're essentially columns of text, one after another. But in this portion, where the crossing of the sea is described, and then the song at the sea, the Song of Miriam, is provided, the text is sort of being pulled apart, if you remember. It's sort of like a lattice or interlocking brickwork. And there are all kinds of interpretations about why this particular portion is written in that particular way, such that it might appear that the sea is parting, there's a before and an after, that this is one of those moments where it's a cleaving, as there might be in your own life, where that was then, this is now. All kinds of things have given rise to what we can make of the text, using Marshall McLuhan's comment that the medium is the message. This text, the way it's printed on the page, not unlike when you learned in school that you could write a poem in the shape of an apple, if the poem was about an apple, right? Or we see something written in the form of a tree, because it's got something to do with that. In the same way, this text invites interpretation simply for the way it's laid out on the page.
Are contemporary editions of Torah still written that way?
Oh, yes.
So it looks, in any one you'd pick up, it's mostly two columns, a wall of text, but then right there it changes.
Precisely.
So this is, think of it as he said, a before and after event, and we mentioned before, there's a before Jesus and an after Jesus resurrection. The history, the book, or set of book, Bible just means set of books, hinges on this moment. The, BC, before Christ, and AD, Anno Domini, yes. Before and after, they were not a people, then they are a people. And the event is Exodus. So we are slaves, we are becoming free people. We are Egyptian in culture, mindset, largely language, custom, and so on, and becoming God's covenant people. It's not a one-off moment, but it's an event that starts a process. Is that fair?
Yes, and you can even say that heretofore, prior to the Exodus, God's calling card, if you will, or the authority by which it matters what God says, is that God created the world. After the Exodus, while that remains true, of course, it's now the Jewish people's relationship to God is, this is the God that redeemed us from Egypt. This is the God that redeemed us from slavery. Right? And that becomes the defining moment and defines the relationship. Sinai on the horizon, some 50 days later, and the rest of the story, but God is the deliverer, God is the redeemer, and later God is the lawgiver, becomes the new operative relationship for this covenantal people.
Here's something you might not have thought of. So same God we're talking about, God, capital G, Yahweh, creates the world, redeems, sustains, etc., the Jewish people, then the lawgiver, then Christians add another major piece to that. God comes among us in Jesus, and so that's God incarnate. So it's this, it doesn't feel to me like loads of continuity in the story. It feels, I'm sorry, I just happened to look at computer people. This is the alpha version of the program, and wow, that looks one way. And you know what? We're moving that team somewhere else, and we're bringing a whole new team of developers, And then they make it, it's like, how is that even related to the, oh, we removed the bugs. No, those were features. And you get all these, and the product, there's some continuity, but it feels like a really different thing. That is basically what's happening with major experiences of how the people are interpreting God, and then who's writing the story. So it's not one person, remember, this is over 2,500 years or so. So it's a people experiencing God in new ways, but with continuity to the past. So we're not jettisoning that, but now God is not just the one who created the heavens and the earth. Now we're in a special relationship, what they call covenantal, and we're God's chosen people, which sounds cool until you realize what that means, and it's not great most of the time. Is that fair?
That's right.
Oh, great, I'm the chosen one again. But adding all these pieces, so think of it that way. And again, also Christianity adds to that. Let me briefly read some of this song. Does Moses just break out singing? Remember, he was not the good talker. So would you like to sing a bit for us?
No, I would not.
Okay, you would
I don't
not.
think you want me to.
Then Moses and the Israelites sang this song to the Lord. What? Extemporaneously? Is this a rap they did? Is it what is there accompaniment? This is a song that was embedded, or I should say, became embedded in the culture. I will sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. Think of the images of God that this, how it portrays God, and why is that important? You see, is God the really nice guy, the lawgiver, the creator, the lover, the forgiver? Who or what is God? The Lord is my strength and my might, and he has become my salvation. This is my God, and I will praise him. My Father's God, and I will exalt him. The Lord is a warrior. The Lord is his name. Is it, what in Hebrew, what is that there? El Shaddai?
Probably.
That's the Almighty. Pharaoh's chariots and his army he has cast into the sea. His picked officers were sunk into the Red Sea. The floods covered them. They went down in the depths like a stone. Thank you, God, for, this is not in there, crushing all my enemies. That's what they're saying. Your right hand, O Lord, glorious in power. Your right hand, O Lord, shattered the enemy. In the greatness of your majesty, you overthrew your adversaries. You sent out your fury. It consumed them like stubble. My favorite line in this. And the blast of your nostrils, the waters piled up. So somehow very human-like, but very big. The floods stood up in a heap. The deeps congealed in the heart of the sea. And it goes on and on, back to verse 11. Who is like you, O Lord, among the gods? They still believe, remember, in monolatry. There's a bunch of gods, but this one, the one we call Yahweh, that's ours. What do most people, this is a tricky question, in America now believe? Is there one God? Is Allah, Yahweh, and God, in Christianity, all the same? Most people would say yes.
They are the sons of Abraham.
That's not the question at all.
I think the New Testament God is a good deal nicer than Yahweh.
Well, then that's not the same God. Is that your point?
Well, Yahweh is the eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And when Jesus comes, we have love and hope.
Okay, so Yahweh is eye for eye, tooth for tooth, and when Jesus comes, we have love and hope. That's not scriptural, but it's a good thought. It's a nice idea. It's kind of scriptural, but is there continuity or not? Is it the same God or not?
Would it be safe to say that there is one God, but we see God differently?
That's very reasonable.
Because if you don't see God as a triune God, it'd be easy to say that's a different God from what Christians see. But if we say we perceive God differently, but it's the same God, makes it much easier, at least for me, to say, yes, that is God.
Did everybody get that? That's a very good, was there a hand over here? Very good understanding of that. I would just add, to throw a monkey wrench in the whole thing, while we think we believe in, what's the word? Monolatry to?
We think we believe
Monotheism. I almost said monogamy. Monotheism. There's one God. In fact, that's not how we act as a culture. We act like we're still in a monolatry, that there are many gods that exist. And they're not, somewhere up there on Mount Olympus or heaven, but there's power and money and these things we aspire to that control our thoughts. And this thing that we call God, Jesus, is one among many, in effect, competing for our loyalty. That's how it comes across.
One among two, the other one
We
being.
don't call them gods. Those things are idols. They're not gods.
Well, how do you distinguish between an idol and a god? Again, scripturally, we treat them basically the same.
Power is very transitory.
Power is transitory. I will agree with you on that. Where does our loyalty, attention, energy, resources, where do they go? Is it to the God of the Bible, the really nice guy Jesus, or the really rough guy Yahweh, or Allah, or... That's my point. I'm not asking us to vote or decide or just think about, we functionally still exist in a monolatry. There are many gods, and one of them that's competing, or we're competing, or however you like to say it, he needs better branding. Somebody told me that. And I said, no. But that's functionally how we still operate. Allison?
But one of the nice things about the conception of God is that he's all things. You can't pinpoint one, he's this.
One nice thing about the conception of God is he's all things. Is that true? If God is everything, then that's not a definition. How theologians, particularly in the early Middle Ages, they called that the via negativa, the way of essentially negating things. It was easier to say, when you're talking about deity, what God is not than what God is. Because almost every quality that I can think of that we would say God is like this, it's some superhuman thing. We're this, but God is kind, God is merciful, God is just, and it's a better version of what we are. So the way that they respond to that is say, well, God is not that. You're going to say something?
Yeah. So this in Judaism is called negative theology, which is essentially the translation of the Latin. It was proposed in Jewish culture by Maimonides. Maimonides does for Judaism what Aquinas did for Christianity, which is to reconcile religious thought with Greek philosophy and logic. Yes? So that if-then statements make sense, we can categorize different types of legislation in different ways, the way you and I organize our thought, because we've been raised in Western culture. Yes? And Maimonides' idea of negative theology was, and it actually is echoed in one of the readings from this morning's service, wherein it says, God's foolishness is wiser than human wisdom. God's weakness is stronger than human strength. Yes, it was in this morning's service. It's essentially saying that when you say God is love, Maimonides would come back and say, well, what do you know of love? You know of familial love, you know of romantic love, you know of human love, but surely that doesn't actually capture what you intend to suggest when you say God is love. And therefore, by saying God is love, or God is strong, or God is good, whatever language we might choose to use to describe God is necessarily going to fall short and is therefore inaccurate, might be even arguably blasphemous. And so the best we can do, goes this negative theological argument, is say what God is not. We can aspire to describe, we can use poetry to try to express, but we must understand that it will inevitably fall short of actually accurately describing God. And so the best we can say is, God is love as I understand it, but God is not love as we conceive of it. It's beyond that. Does that make sense? So that's the first thing, is to begin by appreciating our own inadequacy at describing what is beyond human comprehension, or beyond the wherewithal of our humanly constructed language to make sense of. That's the notion of via negativa or
it's the
or
same
negative
in
theology.
Christianity and Judaism,
Right?
to make that point.
With that same notion of humility, or a sense of our own inadequacy to actually reach the level of being able to accurately describe God, we now come to a text like Exodus, having come through Genesis, where we human beings, the readers that we are, we want to devise some kind of plumb line such that the God in the Garden of Eden, or the God that challenges Abraham to leave his home and to go in the direction that God has directed him, or the God that appears to Moses at the burning bush, or that later appears to the prophets, we want there to be some kind of plumb line that harmonizes all of that. Because that's our want, yes? So that there can be one God that is the protagonist, if you will, that is consistent through all of the biblical text. And we, modern folk, want there to be a notion that what we're describing here at Calvary, and what's being described at Road of Shalom, and what's being described at the Islamic Center by way of speaking of or to God, we like the idea that we're speaking of the same God, even as, you're suggesting, we do that with different idioms or different language, right? We're saying it in different ways, but we're describing the same God. That's how we tend to understand what we mean by monotheism, by saying there's one God in heaven and earth. And this religious group and that religious group and the other religious group are doing their best to describe God, the same God of which we're speaking, but that's the way we tend to make it. Does that make sense? I mean, that's our own want. Whereas we might appreciate that the authors of the story of the crossing of the sea or the deliverance of Egypt were very different people, writing at a different time for a different purpose than were the authors of Genesis, for instance, as if there was one author of Genesis. Does that make sense?
And if you've been slaves and stuck in this foreign empire called Egypt, and they have the best gods and the best technology and the best of everything, your God just bested them, beat them, threw them into the sea. So at that moment, a lot of things are a reaction to what's happening in your lives. And our guy just beat their guy. And that was a big underdog story for the ages. And so our God is portrayed as tough and warrior. Of course that would be the case. And in other times, God comes off differently. But it's what I don't want to say what they needed to hear, but that was a story that needed to be told. That's right. To tell them who they were in that moment. So we go verse through 18, 19, that finishes the whole Song of Moses. It's really lovely. Then it says, then the prophet Miriam, Aaron's sister, which would make her who else's sister? Moses' sister. Do you know why she's called Aaron's sister rather than Moses' sister? I can't find an adequate answer to that. Really cool. This is one of my favorite parts. So Miriam, Aaron's sister, took a tambourine in her hand, and all the women went out after her with tambourines and with dancing. And Miriam sang to them the same line as the first of Song of Moses, which suggests it's the same song, but there's one difference. It's the infinitive plural you. You sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and rider he has thrown to the sea. When Moses sings it, we sing. I'm singing, yay, God. When Miriam says, all of you, here's the note, this is our song now. Tambourine is kind of close. It's called a tolf Miriam, which is...
Woman at the door distributing tambourines, is that allowed?
There is not a woman at the door because they were probably outside, but excellent point. Distributing tambourines, everybody had one. These are still made. You can look up Miriam's drum on YouTube and listen to it. And they are think about if you are don't have any money, enslaved, you don't have a piano, which just takes up a lot of room and is heavy. You have small portable things. And so this is a frame of wood with some type of animal hide stretched over it, and you hit it on your hip or wherever and sing along to it. It's really quite lovely, and this tended to be a female thing to do and would carry them with them, and they would break out in song. There is this, I'm sure Jewish theologians have said this, theme more in the Old Testament than the New, where it often feels like a musical, and I know I've said that before. So when do you ever, I don't want to out anybody, when you're really happy, it was Nick and Kate's daughter, I won't say which one, she just started doing this. I said, "Is that your celebration, happy dance?" "Yes." And she just started boogieing right there at the table. Do you remember that? Well, it was just a few weeks ago. And she was really happy. I said, "Why are you celebrating?" "'Cause I'm happy." And when you're a kid, you start dancing. When you're an adult, you look like an idiot if you start doing that. But in the story, we just got saved, remember? In the front of us is this wall of water, and behind us is this rampaging army bent on revenge. And all of a sudden, the waters opened up, and we walked through, and they all died. Of course you're going to sing and celebrate. And you use what you got. So she's got this little drum, tambourine, and plays and sings. And it says, all of you, many families, I would say particularly in the South, it's almost always a woman, has the role of, we're all doing this, okay. And you can say no to a lot of people, but when she says to do it, you have to do it. There's moral authority. Miriam has that moral authority in that system to say, all of you, you guys, you all, yins, sing, get up and dance. And we're like, okay, no, I mean really like you mean it. So that's what's happening. And then by saying again the first line, they did the whole thing. So is this really the song of Moses, the song of the sea, or the song of Miriam? Whose is it?
Well, in Hebrew it's referred to as Shirat Hayam, which is the song of the sea, or the song at the sea, but it's ascribed to Miriam. These are Miriam's
Yep.
words. Let me give you another insight, just a little
Called
bit.
a prophet, by the way. I don't know if you caught that.
Well, so let's just define that too, because I speak this morning in my remarks about the prophet Micah. In Jewish tradition, a Hebrew prophet, we're going to count Miriam among them, Moses among them. What defines a prophet? What makes for a prophet in the Hebrew Scriptures? Do you know? We tend to think of prophets or prophesying as foretelling the future. In Jewish tradition, a Hebrew prophet is one who is speaking the words of God. That's what it is. That they're speaking, the words that are coming out of their mouth are the words of God, and they can do no other than that. And insofar as they forecast the future, they tend to be conditional. Again, sort of if-then. If you abide by these laws, then good things will happen. If you don't, then calamity will befall you. And that may be a foretelling, but the idea is that it's up to you to decide what happens next. It's not the weather forecast that in 2 days' time a nor'easter's coming through, or on the horizon, this will happen for certain. You can place your bets now. Right? A Hebrew prophet is not so much as a fortune teller or a seer, but one who speaks the words of God. So what Miriam is doing in this moment, insofar as she's described as a prophet, is she's articulating the words of God, or it can come from no other place. Right? Sometimes we refer to something, if we're quibbling about whether the Bible was written by God or by human beings, we might say, well, it was divinely inspired. All right, what we're trying to say, I imagine, with that kind of language, is that it came from a source that was beyond me, or it came through me, or I'm simply the one who put pen to paper. But it's actually an expression that didn't originate with me. And if you've had an insight, or you've had that kind of experience, you know something about what's going on there. Here's the insight I wanted to share with you. The entire tradition of Jewish relationship with this text is that we're plumbing it for meaning and reading it again and again. And one of the analogies that's been made in the rabbinic tradition is that it's akin to a love letter. Now, when I've taught this to high school students, they don't know from love letters. They've never actually written their amorous feelings or any kind of emotion onto a piece of paper, folded and put it into an envelope, posted it, and sent it, waited for it to arrive, and then eagerly opened it when the return letter came, right? They read that missive from their beloved, and they read it again and again, and maybe there's perfume, and maybe it's tear-stained, and it's in their handwriting. Young people know nothing about this today because they're not in the habit of writing things, they're in the habit of texting, it's ephemeral, and the rest. But we appreciate that if we have such a letter, that it's really crucial, right? It's really essential to us, and it is a link to our lover or to someone who's really significant to us, and we cherish it. In much the same way, if the Torah was written by God and is understood as a love letter between God and the Jewish people, then we would have that same kind of relationship. And so one of the ways of making it, the more meaning we bring to anything, the more full of meaning or meaningful it becomes. And so maybe there's a certain place or a certain song or a certain item that's particularly meaningful to you, and it's likely because it's been laden with meaning, yes? And so there's a tradition called gematria. Anyone familiar with that term? Gematria. It's spelled exactly as it's pronounced. Gematria. It means ascribing numerical values to letters. A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, Z is 26. It's a little bit different than the Hebrew 22-letter alphabet, but every letter has a numerical value. If you know the clock on the JCC at Forbes and Murray, it's the Hebrew letters around the 12 that would otherwise be numerals, which is a familiar convention in Hebrew. If each letter has a numerical value, then each word has a sum, such that the letters combined make a certain word, make a certain summation. And words that have the same sum are worth the same value, though they're completely different, have some kind of a link between them, goes this idea in gematria. And the word for song is shirah, and the word for prayer is tefillah, but numerically they're of the same value. I'm blanking on what that number of value is. It's not important, but I can get it to you. So that suggests that song and prayer have the same worth or are understood similarly. And so you can imagine the Song of Miriam or the prayer, or when you offer a prayer, maybe it's the song of your heart. It's not unlike when you realize that lyrics in a song are actually poetry, or that poetry can be put to music. You're like, well, that's interesting. That's a whole other level of appreciating of what's going on here, and that's happening at the same time. So the Song of the Sea, that's the spontaneous expression of Miriam and the people who have now been redeemed or crossed safely to the far side of the sea, is captured in this moment. Significantly, this is called the Mi Chamocha, which means who is like you, which is the opening line here. Who is like you among the gods that are worshipped? And it shows up in each of the daily services or each of the prayer services throughout the day in Jewish tradition. So it's a very familiar sort of rip from the headlines moment in Scripture that becomes part of our regular liturgy. Okay.
So this wonderful, transcendent, people-defining action, Exodus, they break out in song. And notice in the story how quickly it goes, oh wow, the honeymoon is over fast. We're free. And then has anybody count how many times do the Israelites complain?
I think we said 7. Did you say 7?
Just in this story, but the answer is a lot.
A lot.
All the time. Sing to the Lord. Then Moses ordered Israel, all the people, to set out from the Red Sea, and they went into the wilderness of Shur. Wilderness can mean desert or not. It means away from civilization. Jesus went out into the desert. Jesus went out in the wilderness. They went for 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. Imagine you're on a trip, 2 parents, and you got 2 kids in the back seat, and you can't find anywhere, and your air conditioner doesn't work, and you've been driving all day. What are the complaints likely to be? He got on my side. He keeps touching me. Why does he keep looking at me? Now imagine if there are thousands and thousands of people and there's no water, there's no rest stop, and whose fault is it? It's ultimately God's fault, but you complain. Do your kids curse the Lord when they're hot and tired? No. Why won't you fix it, Mom and Dad? It's your fault. You're the adult. You should know what's going on. That's how Moses and Aaron often function in this story. 3 days, found no water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink the water of Marah, which is area, because it was bitter. That's why they called it Marah. Marah means bitter. And the people complained against Moses, saying, "What shall we drink?" And Moses did what? Stay calm, my people. Stay calm and carry on. I got you covered. No, that's not what Moses does at all. Moses cried out to the Lord. Complaining or just help, fix it? And what shall we drink? The Lord showed Moses a piece of wood. And Moses took this piece of wood, threw it into the bitter water, and it became cool and clear. He put it through your big Berkey water filter. Made it good to drink, no pathogens, didn't taste like fluoride. It was very good. So note this. Is that the same thing as turning the water to blood? No. Is it plagues of locusts? But it's another mighty act of God to take care of the people. There's no water to drink. They find some, and they make the water pure. There the Lord made for them a statute and ordinance, and there God put the people to the test. He said, this is an if-then through Moses at that point. If you will listen carefully to the voice of the Lord your God, and do what is right in his sight, and give heed to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will not bring upon you any of the diseases I brought upon the Egyptians, for I am the Lord that heals you. Look, here's this good water to drink. So this is, you could say it's conditional blessing. Is that fair? And that is, if you do these things, keep all. Now, do we know all the commandments yet? No, they come later. But if you do this, none of those bad things that happened to the Egyptians will befall you. It's a reasonable deal. Charles?
Are there fish in this water?
Are there fish in this water? I don't know the answer to that. There were whales in the Red Sea they crossed. Thought that was kind of cool. I don't know if they're fish. This is more of a, they'll get to an oasis here in a bit, more of just a place to rest. Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, and they camped there by the water. Oh, that's way better. This is not some Motel 6. This is at least like a Holiday Inn Express. This is, a level or two above. They got palm trees, yes. Presumably coconuts. Yeah, I don't want to read too much into that text there, but maybe. The other comments? Did you have your hand up, Michael?
Yeah, this is certainly an aspect of the Exodus story that comforts me. That is, what was presented at one point as a people-defining moment, a test of faith that unites them and makes them a new people, immediately evaporates, and they constantly complain in the next chapters. They wish they were back in Egypt. They want to be back in the quails and the manna. He strikes water from the rock. How it seems that the faith that's being dramatized here is very unstable. When I think of Paul after the Damascus Road, I don't think his faith in resurrection ever wavered, and he certainly allows for the possibility of backsliding among Christians. But how are we to make sense of the radical instability of this people defining faith in Yahweh that the Exodus story insists on?
For those listening, great question by Michael. So there's this people-defining moment of the Exodus, but yet right after that, they seem to forget everything that God did for them and struggle with faith, not just a little bit, but foundationally. And not once, but over and over and over. And in contrast, Saul, who becomes Paul, has this experience of meeting Jesus on the road, never seems to waver. I would say that is true according to the stories, but it's not true. I would say what happens with the Jewish people, the Israelites still at that point, is in fact the way things are. If one encounters, in congregational life, it turns out Jews and Christians are almost identical.
Yeah.
Aaron preached, and by the way, Aaron was interpreting Paul just a little while ago to us. That was fantastic. I've never had a rabbi interpret Paul, the epistle reading. Preached a great sermon this morning. So the first thing somebody said is, your date was wrong. And he said the wrong 28, he said 1800 rather than 2800. Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's wrong. Got it. That's and I'm no way am I calling out that person. That is a completely normal, expected reaction. You should be corrected on one minor point, not, wow, I learned a lot about God and my own relationship. Or what I hear every week from a couple, it's really, really cold in here. I can't hear anything. I can hear you, I can't hear the other women. Your voice is louder and deeper. And that's normal. No, please don't hear any criticism from me at all. That's in fact the way it is. And at the same time, that person will be the sweetest, nicest, most wonderful, lovely, but they're human beings. And collectively, how I hear the story as an outsider, but again, I'm remarkably insider, that's how a group of people acts. And it has less to do with faith in God, and that's what human beings are like. We are created in God's image, yet imperfect. And we're called to this, but we try to aspire to be, but rarely reach it. But yet they keep learning, and they have to relearn it. And that's the point we've made multiple times. None of these people, don't take this personally as a judgment of your faith, none of the people that complain make it into the promised land. They've got to get the slavery, Egyptian, pagan thinking out to get the new covenant with Yahweh in. Are all the Jews, the successors of these people, they're all lovely people, right?
To a one.
To a single person, they're all lovely. Just like all the Christian, what a Garrison Keeler, all above average and good looking that time. Yes, especially Calvary. Oh my gosh. I can't even, oh, you're all so good looking, I can't even look right now. So smart, so faithful and kind and generous. Yeah, we're all part of a dating app where we're portraying our best selves. But without makeup, when we're tired, when it's late, maybe we're not our best self. And if you're traveling on there's no road, you're in the desert, and you have water, that's how people act. And I think it's remarkably human. To me, the stories of the Old Testament are much more human-like, like that's how people are, than some of the stories of the New Testament. Just a different perspective. You have anything to
That's Michael. It sounds like in your question you're comparing the Israelite people and their complaining with Paul, who is uncomplaining or undoubtful, doesn't broker doubt, whereas you allow that the Christians to whom Paul is speaking may well have been less faithful, less...
But I would have had the sense that he is less concerned about Christian backsliding than the author of Exodus is about Jewish backsliding here.
Could be. It could be. I'm thinking that we don't have evidence that Moses was so different than Paul in his leadership style, right? There's Edwin Friedman, if you know that name, is a rabbi that wrote a book called Generation to Generation, where he describes family systems theory within congregational life. And he describes that one of the responsibilities that any leader has, a parent, a religious leader, a political leader, is to be, in a time of conflict or uncertainty, a non-anxious presence, right? The child doesn't want to see their parents break down and be incapable of making a decision. You may have your own doubts, right? A politician, a religious leader, anyone we look to as a person of authority who's going to give us guidance, we want them to be certain. Any doubts they may have, they need to take care of before they step out onto the stage and give us our instructions. And that Moses and Paul and others took that seriously, which is why we continue to understand them as leaders, even as we may appreciate, certainly in Jewish tradition, that a Moses or any figure in the biblical tradition from a Jewish perspective is infallible, is imperfect, is prone to error or misjudgment. So there's that tension. There's a recognition, as Jonathon is suggesting, that the reality is that people backslide, people complain, people lose faith, people are uncertain, we all have doubts. Yes? Yes, Russ.
The fact is, Paul wrestled with probably the biggest doubt he could possibly have in his letter to the Romans. By that time in his ministry, he couldn't figure out why his fellow Jews hadn't gotten on board with this unbelievable revelation. He thought, if the Jews aren't getting this, there's something wrong with this message. I mean, he was deeply in doubt. 3 chapters, I think 9 to 11 in the letter to the Romans, wrestle deeply with this conundrum.
That's wonderful.
And at the end, he kind of says, well, there's some things about God that maybe aren't given to us to know. That's my words, not his. But did he ever have doubts? Yes.
Great. So just for the listeners at home, Russ is pointing out that in Paul's letter to the Romans, in 9, 10, and 11, those chapters, he does evince doubt or uncertainty about whether the message is doing its work or is the right message or whether, yeah?
What most people know, the excellent point, Russ, Paul uses a metaphor that he struggles his whole ministry life with this thorn in his side, never says what it is, but it's just this thing nagging at him that he can't sort out. So I'm not saying that caused doubts about God, but there are parts that we're talking about family, the leader should be self-differentiated. Well, it's really hard to be non-anxious when somebody's punching you in the face over and over. And Paul, being thrown in prison constantly, I think made him feel pretty good. He's on the right path. But then other things, why don't these Jews, why don't these Gentiles, it's so clear to me, why is it not clear to them? Think of how that same idea expresses itself today. And let's, without picking partisan sides, how can you people not see the obvious about this president is crazy? He's doing no partisan. How he's this, how he's not doing that. Or just flip the channel. This is exactly what he said he'd do. This is exactly the right thing. A majority of the country feels this way. How do you not get that? It's so obvious. You're hurting yourselves. And I'd like to flip between Fox and MSNBC, and I don't know they're not the same country. How they don't even carry the same stories? And so when we encounter biblical stories, Aaron talks about this in the sermon, the cultural climate of Israel, the area of Israel, was remarkably similar to America today. Rich, powerful people controlled almost anything. A lot of things were performative in religion and other places. People with power were not interested in justice. They're more interested in accruing more power to themselves. I would say that's normal throughout the history of the world. But these two things, people not understanding each other at all or being willing to listen because I'm right, is the underlying message also of the sermon. What does the Lord require of us, Aaron? Do justice. Love kindness. Walk humbly, walk with humility. Really good at the first one, but then the next two are just kind of an after. No, they're all three together. Loving kindness, being humble, they're all there together. And that's part of the important, you may be right, but don't be a jerk about it.
Well, think about,
that's Micah.
This is for me, I'm projecting, so tell me if it resonates for you. Whatever anyone's political views are or opinions are in any particular issue, how off-putting someone else's certitude is. If someone's absolutely convinced that they see it clearly and everyone else is mistaken and they broker no doubt or have no question about the position that they hold, We sort of find that a bit off-putting, and you sort of wonder if they've actually put enough thought into it. Yes? And that, it seems to me, is what we're looking for. A leader that we respect, we see a bit of their humanity. We want them to be right more often than the average person, perhaps. Right? Or one of the knocks on certain candidates in recent elections, well, he acts like the smartest person in the room. I don't know what's wrong with electing the smartest person in the room, but we don't expect that person to be perfect or to always have the right answer. We hope both they'll have good advisors and people who will actually say to them, you're off on this one, or this one's not going to work the way you said. It's a great idea, but it just won't work, right? We want that humanity as part of what it means to be able to identify with the leader, right? Okay.
So the next chapter, chapter 16, it ramps up exactly in Michael's point. Apparently, according to the story, the Israelites stayed in the oasis, palm trees, the springs, for about 6 weeks. Really lovely vacation. Okay, guys, get your stuff. It's time to start walking again. The whole congregation of the Israelites set out from Elim, the oasis, and Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is related to Sinai, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month, so roughly 6 weeks after they departed from the land of Egypt. So as soon as they start going, the whole congregation of the Israelites complained against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. Not a few, the whole congregation. Oh my gosh. The Israelites said to them, just think of this. Do they complain while they're in the oasis? No, that's pretty good. We've got food, we got water, it's pretty nice. If only we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, where we were slaves. When we sat by the flesh pots, that's a King James translation. It's the big pots where they made meat. The Israelites did not eat meat. Beef, goats anyway. They may have eaten fish. They're remembering, it's not gaslighting exactly, but they're remembering it differently than what happened. Oh, remember when we had all this New York strip and ribeye? You never ate steak when you were slaves. Oh, flesh pots, not here, but later suggest like sexual stuff. It just means we feasted back in Egypt. No, you didn't. We ate our fill of bread. Oh, God, remember that Egyptian bread? It was so good. Not like this. What bread are you giving us, Aaron and Moses? For you brought us out of into this wilderness to kill all of us with hunger. It's like, oh my God, do you not remember all the stuff God just did for you? Nope. It's all, you said, what have you done for me lately? Right. All the time in the story. Okay, Moses goes to God, presumably. Then the Lord said to Moses, I'm going to rain bread from heaven for you, and each day the people shall go out and gather enough for that day. This becomes a story of do you trust God or not trust God? You didn't have water, I made the bitter water good to drink. You were slaves, I set you free. I punished your enemies, I got rid of your enemies. Now you're still complaining, you going to trust me or not? I will test them, do you trust me or not? Whether they will follow my instruction on the 6th day, when they prepare what they bring in, it will be twice as much as they gather on the other days. So Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites, in the evening you shall know that it was the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt. So this manna, what we call it, bread, becomes a sign. In the morning you shall see the glory of the Lord, because he heard your complaining. I have heard your great love for you. Complained so much, I finally did what you wanted. Here's some bread. And Moses said, when the Lord gives you meat to eat in the evening and fill of your bread in the morning, because the Lord has heard your complaining. What are we? Your complaining is not against us, but the Lord. So Moses and Aaron are saying, don't complain to us. Your real problem is with God. Fair? Okay. Then Moses said to Aaron, say to the whole congregation, draw near to the Lord, for he has heard your complaining. Aaron told them all this stuff, and you shall get bread. One of the most fantastic things. So what did the Israelites call this bread being rained down from heaven? Anybody remember? the bread being rained down from heaven. In the morning they wake up, it's like dew on the ground. And it's called manna. And interestingly, in the Hebrew, it's basically saying, what is this? So manna is that means bread. It's a play on words. It's like, oh my God, what is that? That's what they call it. What is that? Is manna, which is a fantastic twist to the story we miss in translation.
Right. Do you know what a portmanteau is, where you take two words and smash them up together, like spork or brunch, smog, right? Manhu means what is this? And together, manhu becomes mana. And so that's what it is. And so in John Stone's very cute. What is it? Whatchamacallit? There was a candy bar, right, called the whatchamacallit, right? That's just what it is. It's unfamiliar, but it seems to be really tasty. And so that's what they call it. Manhu, what is this?
I thought that was so cool. That you call it, like, what's the great churchy liturgical name? What is this? Right. That's what they called it. We'll stop there in the story. Any last questions?
Now, manna from heaven has now become synonymous with largesse.
That's right. Okay, thank you all very much.